Paul and our speakers for a really inspiring session. Just a gentle reminder that the first workshop is going to be at 11 o'clock. So if you have signed up for the workshop at 11 o'clock, this is your reminder to head over to the workshop area in the back. Moving on, we will have another expert panel, this time on the waste management situation in Hong Kong, hosted by Mark Harper, the Group Sustainable Development Manager of John Swire and Sons. This session is supported by the British Chamber of Commerce and the European Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong. Thank you to both organizations for your support. Please welcome Mark and the speakers to the stage.
Okay, hopefully everyone can hear me fine. It's kind of strange having to speak through one of these things, and hopefully it's clear and I'm not sounding like Darth Vader or anything. And okay, thanks. Okay, so what we're here to do today is to essentially talk about waste management. You'll see quite a strange title for our talk today, which is Waste Management, the dating game versus the sharing game. Just to be clear, this isn't some kind of weird Bumble, Tinder discussion around beach cleanups. This is really just to get to the core of how partnerships can be used to actually drive sustainable change when it comes to sustainable waste management. And we are blessed really to be joined on this panel by three amazing speakers who are really leading in this space. So firstly, we have Gabrielle Kirstein, who's the CEO of Feeding Hong Kong, a local NGO. You can applaud onto the stage. We also have Robbie McRobbie, the CEO of the Hong Kong Rugby Union, as well as the founder of the Green Sevens initiative. Can you? And we also have Nigel Mattravers, who is the director of Alba Integrated Waste Management Services. So over the course of the conference, you're going to hear a lot about the state of waste management in Hong Kong. You'll probably hear about the fact that there's still no municipal solid waste charge or landfill charge in Hong Kong, and the fact that the numbers are all going in the wrong direction as far as the amount of waste, total waste, the amount of waste per person generated, as well as, unfortunately, the recovery and recycling rates are also going in the wrong direction. So we don't really want to go into a criticism around how government policy could be shifted to address this. We really wanted to focus around, as I said, how partnerships can be used to really push this agenda forward. So at Swire, this is a short opportunity to pitch ourselves and I guess address why we may have appeared on Vanda's and Chris's list up there. So for us, partnerships has always been incredibly important, particularly when you're looking at very complex systemic issues. So for example, we've done a lot with the IUCN on the shark fin issue. We've done a lot with the United for Wildlife organization when it comes to tackling the illegal wildlife trade. And as mentioned by Paul earlier, we're a founding member of the Drink Without Waste initiative. We're partnering with Alba and Baguio to build the New Life Plastic, Hong Kong's first plastic recycling facility. And we're blessed really to be partnering with all of these organizations in one form or another. So to get the ball rolling, I've got a series of kind of tongue-in-cheek questions around partnerships. And I'd like to start off by asking Nigel, as someone with a huge amount of experience in the waste management industry globally, but also specifically here in Hong Kong, what role has partnerships played in actually being able to enable you to deliver on the waste management contracts that your businesses have taken on? How important has it been, for example, in the WE facility that you guys manage?
Absolutely critical. The WE project, for those not familiar, is Hong Kong's first electronic waste treatment facility, well, first formal world-class facility for treatment of electronic waste. And our biggest partner in this case is the government. It's a government-backed project. Government have provided the legislation. We've got a complete service, a door-to-door service, which is probably unique in the world. So our partners are also the public of Hong Kong, and getting them to buy into this service, to recognize it and use it. And then we've also got our partners who are the off-takers of the materials. Just going back on the very first point, I've got to today's latest numbers. We're achieving 89% recovery rate, which is beyond, I think, anybody in the world is achieving at the moment. So 89% of the waste electrical equipment that comes to the plant in Shun Mun is now being recovered. So essential then we have good partners for the offtake of that material and good partners as well for local logistics as well. So no waste project or a move to the circular economy is possible without partnerships in place.
Robbie, I noticed from the statistics that are upon the Hong Kong Sevens website that the waste generated at the last Sevens was around 48% lower than in the prior Sevens tournament. What role did partnerships play in actually enabling you to actually deliver on that massive milestone?
Yeah, well, we started a Green Sevens campaign in 2014 to reduce the environmental footprint of the event, and also to try to use the Sevens as a platform to help educate people a bit more around sustainability issues. We are very much amateurs at this. If we do anything well, it's running a sports organization. So sustainability is not something that we have an inherent expertise in. So for us, partnerships have been completely critical from the start. I think without, first of all, working with Business Environment Council and then the Purpose Business, we wouldn't have known what to do. They were the guiders, the experts that told us what we should be aiming at. I think then we developed what I like to call a coalition of the vaguely willing. So the stakeholders involved with the Sevens to a greater or lesser extent have kind of come on board, and that's critical because obviously we don't control all the facets at the Sevens. The stadium belongs to the government. The concessions belong to, in fact, some of the people here today, Vitasoy, one of the concession holders, our partners, Coca-Cola, Carlsberg. So without them coming to the party again, it's very limited to what we can do. And I would say that critically at the center of all of this, none of it would have been achieved without Kirstein Low, EPD, the Environment Bureau. Without Kirstein's leadership and her gentle persuasion, she was really the fulcrum of this whole thing. And as I say, we haven't saved the planet, we haven't changed the world. We've taken small steps over the last 6 years, but we wouldn't have achieved anything without partnerships in general, but without Kirstein in particular.
So, Gabrielle, looking at the Feeding Hong Kong website, you have 370 partnerships with different food companies, including Cathay, and you're working with around 140 different charities to receive the redistributed food. So clearly, partnerships are a core element and core to your model. But in your experience, what kind of characteristics or traits make the ideal partner?
Great question. So for us, as you say, partnerships are at the heart of absolutely everything we do. It's how we move food from where it's surplus and redirect it to where there's need in the city. And it's all about partnerships with food companies and partnerships with charities. Now, what we're looking for from a partner, it does differ, whether they're on the food industry side or whether on the NGO side. But I think at the heart of both is really, it's got to be a partnership that there's mutual benefits. It's got to be a win-win. And so when we're working with companies, we really start by going to this. We're not there pointing fingers at companies saying, you know, you're bad because you're throwing food away. We're starting that conversation with, we understand that in the normal course of business, there are going to be times, there are going to be occasions where you have good food that you're not able to sell. So let's sit down and have a conversation about when that happens, how that happens, and how can we work together to ensure that on those occasions, there is a safe way, a sustainable way, a professional way for you to donate that food and to make sure that it's going to help people in need. And that's the role that we're playing. And then similarly, when we're working with the charities, the conversation that we're starting with is, let's understand what your needs are. Who are you serving in the community? Yeah, a charity that is working with seniors is going to have different needs to a charity that's working with children. Yeah, it's basis. A charity that is cooking meals, has a big kitchen, is going to be very different to a charity that has no storage, no fridges, no freezers, is putting together food parcels. So really sitting down and understanding what their needs are, what their capacity is, but also what their limitations are, and then doing what we can to be able to match needs, to redirect food to those frontline charities. But it really does have to be, there's got to be something in it for both sides. And for the charities, what the conversation that we have is that we're there to take care of the logistics. The frontline charities that we work with, their expertise is actually distributing food into the community. They're the social welfare experts. You know, if we're able to focus on the logistics, we can worry about whether we need to get a chilled or frozen truck, what the temperature of the storage is, and then they can just focus on distributing out to the community.
So from the point of view, particularly for the other NGOs that are in the room, you talked about the fact that the approach that you make is very needs-based. So how would you recommend that the NGOs in the room approach potential corporate partners, for example, and what mechanisms, what tools would you recommend around that needs-based approach?
So I think if we're talking specifically about food donations, I think the first place to start is really for that charity to consider, do they have the bandwidth, the people, the expertise to be able to not just distribute the food, but also to coordinate the logistics with the company. And I think this goes back again to, there's very often, I think, a tendency for certainly charities to think that the more we do, we should be doing everything. You know, if we're feeding people, we should also be cooking food. We should also be working with the donor. But I think there is something to be said for just taking a step back and looking at where your area of expertise is. Now, if you do have the bandwidth, I think it's really looking for partners, but for food companies that you can sit down with and have those conversations about long-term relationships. So for example, bakery chains, we work with a lot of bakeries where we've directly connected a frontline charity with a particular store that's close by, so that that charity can go at the end of the day, they can pick up whatever surplus is left over and bring it straight back to their centre. And when it works well, is when that is happening every single night, when that charity has a roster of either volunteers or staff that they can be coordinating to go and do that every night. And then what we have what evolves over time is that the charity gets to know that donor. It becomes a relationship. It becomes more than just an act of donating. It becomes about a community, building a community relationship. And that's when really we start to see the most successful partnerships, I think.
Okay, thank you. So in the absence of a sort of like a Tinder style app for waste partnerships, how would you know who to partner with and who within a particular organization you should be speaking to? And I guess that question's to Robbie in the sense that through, as you said, the coalition of the vaguely willing, how do you actually go about identifying who the best people is to speak to within those organizations?
It's a very interesting question because what we've found over the years with the Green Sevens is a number of the companies that are part of the Vaguely Willing Coalition, they have got great sustainability policies, and they've got people within the organization that are working specifically in that area. but we don't necessarily get to speak to them on a regular basis. So I think that one of the challenges has been, finding the people within the organization who have the expertise and knowledge in that area that can contribute to the coalition. We're talking primarily to marketing, sponsorship people, and and sustainability, is not completely off the radar, but it's not at the top of the list of priorities. So I think that going forward, the key thing for all organizations, for all of us, is how do you embed the sustainability passion throughout the company, so it doesn't just sit in one office with the sustainability department. Everybody in the company buys into it. So no matter whether you're talking to sponsorship, marketing, communications, sales, whoever it is, they are aware and they're thinking about the sustainability aspects of the conversation.
Do you have something?
Yeah, can I just reinforce what Robbie was saying? With my various hats on, I encounter this. Most big corporates have got great sustainability statements, CSR beliefs, but getting that down to working level is far more difficult. So I often speak at big corporate events to do with electronic waste. But then I say to you, well, what happened to all of those computers, all of those TVs and things? Oh, we don't know. We leave that to the IT department. So nobody has told the IT department, by the way, you need to come up with a sustainable solution for disposing of all these TVs that we have in every office now. And that's true with every type of waste. We really do need the top management of the corporates to push it right down to say, I want to see your behaviors at all the different levels, including marketing, including PR. It's not just something that we say just to put in the corporate annual reports. It's got to be real.
Can I just jump on that? I completely agree. You've got to have commitment from the top level. But I think what we've really found with the most successful partnerships is when there's then ownership on the front line. So when it comes to donating food, yes, we need the CEO, yes, we need the sustainability team to really help drive, but it's only successful if we have the team that is working in the warehouse, the team that is working in the shop, that really own it, that are really passionate about it and really believe in it as well.
I think just a practical example of that. So when we first started with the Green Sevens, we were trying to increase the amount of recycling that we were doing in the stadium. So obviously one of the key partners in that was the cleansing company. So we met with the cleansing company management, and they were all very enthusiastic. Oh yeah, this is great. We'll help with this. We'll make sure that the amount of plastic is increased. It's going to the right stuff. Fantastic. When it actually came to the event, they clearly hadn't spoken to the staff who were actually on the ground collecting the waste, who were still not sticking it into the right bins, sticking it into collected things. So again, yes, there was intent, or there was buy-in from the senior management, but the people on the ground didn't have the information, didn't have the passion, so it didn't work.
Paul mentioned Drink Without Waste quite a bit earlier on, and one of the key learnings that we had, so Swire was one of the founding members of Drink Without Waste, and we spent the initial 6 months putting in place quite a strong governance structure with terms of reference, so that every organization felt that they had an equal vote, an equal voice within the group, no matter how much they funding or whatever that they were putting into the initiative. One organization, one vote. And to me, that was one of the key learnings from that partnership. From the partnerships that you've worked on, the successful and the not successful, what are some of the key learning points that you'd like to impart to the audience, as far as these are the things that you really should be looking at putting in place or avoiding? Do you want to start off?
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump straight off that, give another very practical example. One of our very first food donor was Pret A Manger, and we're still working with them today. And I think what's truly made this successful was that first of all, we had the support from the management. It was, it was part of the philosophy of the company out of the UK. The team had come across and they really wanted to build it in Hong Kong. So we really started in a very fortunate position. But I think what truly made it successful was then how it was filtered down to every single person that works within that organization, whether you are working in a kitchen, whether you're in the shop front. And it starts with the trade, like the induction. Feeding Hong Kong is introduced as the partner for Pret a Manger. This is why we donate food. This is what happens to when food is donated. And I think when you have that approach to it, that it's really built in, that the sense of pride. So during COVID, we've obviously been massively affected. And I think one of the things for us that's been really just so encouraging is we had to stop a number of our retail pickups. And it's the store staff that are calling us up that are saying, when can we start again? When can we donate? And so I think one of the things that I would encourage any kind of company that's looking at a program like food donation is really, how do you incorporate it throughout the organization? How do you embed it in your training? How do you build in incentives as well to encourage? We can't rely on everyone just doing it because it's the right thing to do. How do we actually build that into the way that it's structured?
Robbie, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think just to echo something that Gabrielle touched on before, I think that not finger pointing and rock throwing is massively important. I think it's easy to pick holes in people doing stuff. So take that example, if you start off with the bakery saying, well, why have you made too much bread? Then, you're not going to get very far. And I think that it's giving credit for people who are actually trying to do something, even if it's not perfect, understanding the limitations, encouraging, empathizing, because if people are scared to take a small step because they're going to get ridiculed, they're going to get bricks thrown at them by green pressure groups, they won't do anything. The easy thing is to do nothing. To stick your head above the parapet is very, 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 very tough. For us to admit that we had a problem with single-use plastic glasses and that was tough. Nobody had ever asked us a question about it before. We raised it and put it on the agenda, and that was tough. And people, reacted in different ways. A lot have been supported, but some people have then said, well, you should be doing better, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. I think that, as I say, being mutually supportive and understanding of partners, I think is critical.
Nigel, you have experience in working in these kind of partnerships, not just in Hong Kong, but globally. What elements of global best practice do you think that could be brought to Hong Kong that maybe isn't currently being employed?
I've been really careful all morning, try and avoid to use the government word. But when you look back and people say, well, they're doing this in Germany, they're doing this in France, they're doing this in the UK, there is a role for government to make it happen. We have European legislation defining what should be done and encouraging to do. The local authorities and whatnot have responsibilities to be part of this. So we cannot deny the role of government in assisting to make these things happen. At the end of the day, if we're going to achieve the high controlled reduction in terms of waste and recovery and do it in an environmentally safe manner, it costs money. This English expression, where there's muck, there's brass. It may be true if you're dealing in brass, but not if you're dealing in plastics. So we really do need to have government engagement. I'm not saying necessarily government's responsibility, but we've got to work in partnership. Now, the plastics facility we referred to earlier on with Swire, Coca-Cola, Alba and Baguio, we have taken a flyer. We've gone ahead without legislation in place. There is a significant risk here in doing what we're doing, but we believe in it, and that's why we want to do it. But yeah, there is a risk. So I really do believe that the role of government, with little g, is significant, really, in making any of these great things happen. Yeah.
From a partnership perspective, obviously you've got a diverse array of different types of partnerships. You've got the sort of partnering with single organizations, like you talked about, as far as the capturing of the food, all the way, so like a monogamous style partnership, all the way through to a multi-partner partnership, like Drink Without Waste. From each of your perspectives, what do you think are the key differences between those types of partnerships and the types of rules or procedures that need to be put in place in order to make those partnerships effective? Gabrielle, do you want to start that one?
Yeah, and I think there's a place for both types of partnership, and the way that we approach it is which is going to drive the largest impact. And I think the partnership we have at Cafe Pacific is a great example of a monogamous relationship that worked really well, because what we've done is together we've developed a completely unique program with its own set of logistics to be able to rescue the surplus food from inbound flights into Hong Kong. Now that's evolved over the course of 3+ years. It started as a pilot program. And what's truly unique about it for all the programs and partnerships we have at Feeding Hong Kong is Feeding Hong coordinates staff to be based on the airport. We're working alongside the CPCS colleagues there to actually rescue this food. We're coordinating a fixed set of logistics. We've got a route, so 4 times a week we're sending trucks over there to pick up surplus food to bring back. So everything that we've invested in it, everything that the CPS team have invested in it, that is one where maintaining that monogamous relationship, I think, continues to reap rewards on both sides. But then on the other side, this year we've had a lot of companies that for the first time have made a donation. They've been faced with a certain situation, a certain scenario where they've got a backlog of stock in their warehouse and they've chosen to donate. And they've chosen this time to donate to Feeding Hong Kong because we've stayed open throughout. We were there, we were able to support them. But it may be that if they face the same situation in a few months' time or next year, that there is another organisation that at that point in time will actually have a better service that they can offer for that particular company. And it all depends on the type of food, the shelf life of the food, the charity that can make the best use of it. So I think it really is on a case-by-case basis.
Great.
And there are a place for both types of partnership.
Robbie, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think from our point of view, again, because we're not experts in the area, we've tended to talk to and work with and partner with quite a wide variety of people. I think with that, it's important for us to continue with this sort of analogy, to have good marriage or relationship guidance counselors to provide advice. So for us, people like Nigel, Gina at the Jockey Club, as I say, BEC, Purpose Business, have been so critical, because when you don't know the difference between biodegradable, compostable, what goes to landfill, what doesn't, then having experts in that area to help you and to ensure that you end up in the right relationships with the right people who can help is absolutely critical.
Great. I'm conscious of time. We've got about 10-12 minutes left, so I'd like to open the questions out to the floor. If you could please keep the questions short and sharp. It's not an opportunity to pitch your business or for a statement. So if you could keep questions short. And does anyone have any questions from the floor? Mike Kilburn over there has got one, I think.
Thank you. My question is, how important is the introduction of an MSW charge to further stimulate the development of a circular economy or waste economy in Hong Kong?
Nigel, do you want to lead on that one?
Absolutely critical. Where else in the developed world can we dump our waste for nothing? Well, it's not nothing. The taxpayer is paying for a very expensive hole in the ground. Unless people see that there is value in the material, then people are going to carry on doing what they are. And equally, are not going to invest in a recycling factory of some kind, because if it takes $50 to recycle something, but it costs you $0 to dump it in the wet landfill, well, at the end of the day, the finance department are going to say, why bother? We heard all the sustainability things, but bottom line, it's cheaper to dump it. We've got to show that there is value in the resources that we're throwing away in Hong Kong.
Any other questions from the floor? Okay, we've got one that's been submitted here. So it says, I totally agree that partnerships is so important in waste reduction, and especially during the pandemic. For consumers, we order so much takeaway and online groceries nowadays. It seems we're using more plastic again. What can be done to address that? Volunteers.
I've got the microphone. I genuinely cannot believe what some of the companies are saying about why they can't use washable, reusable cups, for example, in coffee shops. Oh yeah, we've got to use paper cups now because of COVID-19. Why? I was in a restaurant just not far from this very place. I've never had a meal served to me indoors in so much plastic. I took a photograph of it. I couldn't believe I was indoors at a restaurant and everything was served in plastic in a bag and everything. Unbelievable. I think people are taking the easy route out. There may be, we really have got to think very hard. We're coming out of COVID, we're told, in Hong Kong, not in America. We can go back to the beach. So let us go back to using sustainable practices in restaurants and food, and open up the recycling banks. I don't know why the recycling banks are closed because of COVID. I don't know. Yeah, let's get back.
Robbie, anything from you? Because obviously that's when hopefully the Sevens return next year. That's obviously something you're going to have to take into account.
Absolutely, yeah. So as Nigel says, just to reiterate, I mean that there are increasing number of reports coming out explaining why proper cleaning of reusable cups is no more dangerous from a COVID point of view than using a single-use cup. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of this again is going to be to use the word, the government is their stadium, so they're going to have to be supportive and comfortable with what we do. But yeah, we've got unfortunately a warehouse full of reusable cups, so we're very keen to be getting them back in the stadium next April.
There's a question here that says, any tips on how to encourage top management to implement circular economy mindsets at an operational level? Does anyone want to take that? Because you're all kind of involved in the circular economy in one form or another. Nigel, it's got to be something that you've got an opinion on. This is core to your business model.
It is, and thank you for the managers here today for having my slide on the screen for so long. It is absolutely vital that we get back to the corporate management to say, look, if you are going to achieve what you've put in your green annual report, your CSR targets, then you've got to do this, but equally make it work all the way through the organization. And that properly managing these materials, or even properly getting engaged in repair, reuse of materials, will really feed back as a positive and hopefully cost-saving aspect to the business.
What do you think are some of the pain points? This is another aligned question. What do you think are some of the pain points associated with implementing the circular economy in Hong Kong, and how can we address those?
It gives us more work to do. People have got used to the way of working. This is the way they do. If they've got to change the way they work, that means they've got to do something different. That means they've got to stop that. Maybe they've got to do more work, make more provision, make more storage available, those kind of things. And so people obviously just want to carry on doing what they're doing. So there is a pain point when they say, well, okay, boss, you told me to do this, but I'm going to need an extra 3 staff, or I'm going to need a small warehouse, or I'm going to need some storage space in the basement, whatever it may be. But there will be points that you've got to recognize that to achieve the circular economy, there is things that we need to do.
Gabrielle?
I think, one thing we can add, well, certainly from our perspective, data.
Yeah.
It's all about data. How do we convince particularly the senior managers, is we're able to share data. This is the tonnage of food that we've rescued. This is the amount of CO2 that has been offset because it's gone to feed people rather than end up in landfill. This is the number of meals we've supported because we've rescued this food. So to be able to quantify it, to provide those reports, to be able to show what the positive impact has been by changing behavior. We put an economic value as well. This is the value of the food that's been saved. Being able to put that kind of report together, I think, is incredibly powerful, and we're able to provide the numbers that can be plugged into those types of reports.
Robbie, it's widely acknowledged the amazing work that you guys have done around addressing the single-use plastic used in beverages at the Sevens. What's next for you? Are there any plans for sort of rolling out similar initiatives across the food element of the F&B offerings at the Sevens?
Well, in terms of, I mean, I think one important thing to say about the reusable cups, apart from giving me a huge number of sleepless nights when we introduced them for the first time, it wasn't without its challenges, I have to say. But what we've done is we partnered with bottlers, so those cups are also they don't just sit in the warehouse all year round. Well, they are at the moment, but in theory they shouldn't be sitting in a warehouse. So bottlers actually do rent them out for other events. So the idea is that they don't just save 180,000 single-use cups at the Sevens every year. They also, during the course of their lifespan, will save many millions of single-use cups and go into landfill because they use at other events. So, I think that's an important part of what we did. So, those cups are hopefully in the future, in the once we get beyond COVID, are being used on a regular basis. In terms of what's next for us, yeah, I mean we're looking at some initiatives. I think we've decided that. I mean, we're excited about being able to. We started off with looking at recycling, and then, to be honest, we lost a little bit of enthusiasm because we did have a lack of confidence in what was happening to the plastic. I think with Nigel's new plant coming online, that I think will renew our confidence, assuming that we're using the right plastic. So I think recycling will be very much back on the agenda for us. But I think reduction in waste broadly is something which we think is the low-hanging fruit. So I think reduction in waste, the reuse, the cups obviously central part to that, and then revisiting the recycling based on the changed conditions in Hong Kong.
Okay, so we've got about 3 minutes left, so I'll take the opportunity, sort of the moderator's privilege, to ask the last question. So I was in a shop recently, and Christmas music was starting to play already, which is slightly depressing in late October. But as we're rapidly approaching Christmas, and if you could go to government, corporates, or the general public with one item on your Christmas wish list of what do you want companies, or, as I said, government or general public to do to drive more effective waste management in Hong Kong, what would that be? And maybe if we start with Gabrielle and then just move down the line. So,
the waste charging thing has got. If it's going to be one thing, it's a policy change. Should be waste charging.
Robbie?
I would say the introduction of waste charging.
Yeah.
Well, can I add on to that one, which is the PRS for plastics? Producer responsibility. We have it for electronic waste, and I think we've already demonstrated that's really effective. But again, at the moment, while there is no value on a plastic bottle, they're very expensive to collect. Don't do it. And yet we're all complaining about plastics in the ocean. So yeah, a quick implementation of the producer responsibility scheme for plastics with the help with Drink Without Waste.
Yes, I was just going to say Paul would kill me if I didn't mention the fact that Drink Without Waste are actually pretty close to publishing its recommendations to government around how a producer responsibility scheme for plastic drinking bottles should be established, and what it should look like, and the kind of fees and processes involved in that. So we're pretty much at the end of the session now, so I just want to take this opportunity to thank all of the panel for sharing their insights and their knowledge. For me, the key takeaways are that partnerships need to be needs-based, that they need a figurehead, whether it's a Kirstein Lowe or a CEO, but that information and the guidance needs to go down from the top, down to the actual people working on the ground to actually implement and make sure that the program's aims are delivered and delivered effectively. But on that note, I'd like to end this and thank you very much for your attention.